dialect in China, it's like the same. You can like read it.
Right.
So you can communicate through their language.
Exactly. No, that you're absolutely right. That Chinese, in a way, how you pronounce the character was kind of like, Cantonese pronounce it one way, right? Northerners pronounce it another way, but they can both read the same text, right? So that works in certain ways, right? In a way, you can think about it of Latin, right? In much of, Europe prior to the 20th century kind of posed a similar type of system, right? It's like, well, I speak French and you speak Italian and you speak German, but we all know Latin, right? So when they're picking a new pope, they'll just talk in Latin because that's what they all know, right? So that's kind of like what Chinese characters, yes, they can, it's less on the pronunciation, yeah.
I mean, another benefit of Chinese characters is that I think they're more information dense,
right?
Than like the Latin alphabet, so you can pack more information onto the page. And if you look at Latin manuscripts, for example, oftentimes you'll see in Greek manuscripts they'll use these like abbreviations that are basically not functioning the same way as Chinese characters because they don't want to write out the whole word.
Right.
Like for common words like and, trying to kind of simulate that.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's true, and I know this because my book is being translated into Chinese. And so when you see the Chinese version, you're like, it looks shorter. And I'm like, I wrote a 400-page book. I want a 400-page book, right? And it's like, this looks 200 pages, but it's information dense. So it requires fewer characters to say, think about it. Like you have to spell out that, T-H-A-T, 4 characters. But in Chinese, it's 1 character, right? What else? Yeah.
I guess this is. I think what's annoying me when when you're trying to do science stuff is eventually it's if you lose Latin and Greek, eventually you run out of characters to use.
Yeah.
In Chinese, you can kind of invent one and then just say this means that.
That's true.
Yeah, you don't really have you don't have the issue of running out.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You never run out of characters in Chinese, right? Or at least I've never run out, right? And yes, it's true. And the other point that you raise is new characters coming into existence over the centuries. That's a fascinating topic. Even now in the internet age, right? The creation of sort of new kind of fun characters, right, is kind of an ongoing thing. That's like that emoji question. We'll get to it in a second. Anybody else? Yeah.
I also think with a new character that you don't know, usually you can both guess the meaning and guess the pronunciation.
Right. So this is kind of getting back to that the black color example I gave. It's also getting back to the lone example I gave. When you're reading a text and I see a character I don't know, you basically the way you fake it till you make it, So the way you fake it till you make it is you look at the character and say, within this character, are there any characters I know how to pronounce? Okay? And you're like, maybe that's pronounced die, right? But I'm not sure. So, but it's like, and let's say 60% of the time, you'll be right? You know what I mean? It kind of works, but it doesn't always work. That's the thing. It doesn't always work. Yeah. But yeah, it's true. The characters, because they're information dense, they give you a lot of information. Once you learn them, right, you can look at a text and you get a lot of information from them in a way that you don't get from the alphabet, right? Yeah, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think previously we discussed, for example, with dialects, even with Japanese, a lot of kanji, you can communicate through writing, but also you can sort of communicate through time. We can read Tang Dynasty texts, and essentially it's the same thing. People who study calligraphy imitate Yan Zhenqing, who lived during the Tang Dynasty. And so there's sort of a cultural continuity that exists where you can look at this and say, maybe if you dropped a Chinese person from modern China into the Tang Dynasty, maybe they wouldn't be able to understand anyone. Well, okay, maybe if they were from a specific region whose dialect is more similar to the Tang official dialect, they could communicate verbally. But if you were I don't know, you probably couldn't communicate with anyone. But you could communicate with them through writing, and you would know the famous poets and whatnot, so there's a sense of cultural continuity that I think you get less. So I don't think that a lot of people in like England have a really strong connection to. I can't think of an English teacher that's very
Okay.
Part of the problem.
Yeah, okay, right, okay. Interesting point, interesting point. I like the point. The perception of cultural continuity through the writing system certainly is powerful, yeah.
Building off of that a little bit, correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe that there was some form of like literacy diplomacy in East Asia